Robnett is a real estate developer and CEO of Shannon Robnett Industries, and he has completed over $200 million in construction projects ranging from multifamily, office buildings, schools, industrial, mini storage, and more. Shannon sees tremendous value in development strategies versus value add. In this episode, he shares some snapshots of his 40 years in the real estate business, including how he works with city government and residents to determine the right product to develop, and how development makes even more sense, especially when we are expecting little to no rent growth in the immediate future. All right. Well, Shannon, thank you for joining us here today, and welcome to the show, sir. How are you this morning?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me.
Very glad to have you on here. So why don't we go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started into real estate?
Well, my background is kind of a little different than most. I grew up in it. My mom is a third-generation realtor. My father was a general contractor. And so it was just kind of what I always did. It's what I always knew. I always saw deals being done at the dinner table. And, I tried to go the college route. I saw my brother following my father's footsteps, and I'm sitting there struggling, working at a coffee shop, trying to pay my insurance bill on my car. And my brother in 1994 is making, 60 grand a year. So I quickly changed courses and followed the family business back into real estate development and construction.
And so you jumped right into the real estate development aspect of things. So can you tell us about that? And did you join your family directly, or did you kind of branch off and do your own thing?
Well, we've done a lot of deals together. We've done a lot of deals separately. I've got a great family, so it's really easy to get advice and help. But I was working for my dad on a construction project, and I got to know the neighbors next door, and they had a piece of property that they were wanting to sell, and it wasn't quite right for the neighborhood, and it needed to be rezoned. And my crane operator on the job was looking for a yard for his space. So here I was 20 years old. I wrote not my last $500. It was my only $500 for an earnest money for this property. And I got it through the rezone process, and I redeveloped it, and I sold it to my crane operator. And so here I was really kind of hooked on this because I was able to take a piece of property, re-envision it, and put it back out and make it much more valuable than the property that I found. And so that's kind of how I took the construction and morphed it into more of a development line of thinking, as far as where most of my professional career has been, in the development field with a minor in construction, if you will.
With these development projects, are you developing mostly multifamily properties, commercial, like retail, or mixed use? What are you developing?
So we do kind of a couple of different things. We do a lot of industrial space. I'm just finishing an industrial subdivision, getting ready to start two more. We also do quite a bit of multifamily, and we've done some opportunity zone developments as well.
So what exactly is the overall thought process behind approaching a development? Because I would imagine it's got to be kind of really, you have to be, maybe, I think it's more creative in nature than it would be if you're just looking at an existing property and you're saying, yeah, I'm just going to go and renovate it and just bump up the rents.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different than value add in the space that, you kind of have to look at it from 30,000 feet, and you have to look at, in this city, it has a need. And in that particular need, where is the best place to relocate that need in the city? And so fortunately here in Idaho, we've got we have quite a bit of available land. So we're not necessarily redeveloping everything, but you have to look at the city as a whole. You have to look at freeway access. You have to look at, proximity to shopping. It's not just about, hey, this is an apartment complex that we can put new lipstick on and, rename it and rebrand it and, force appreciation. you've got to go through and you've got to look at the whole thing. Then you've got to look at the comp plan. You've got to see what the city wants. You've got to go through city council meetings and hearings. So there's a lot more to it. But the reality is I find that to be a lot more challenging. I really like the challenge of being able to say, hey, I created that, not I repainted that or I repurposed that, it's really more of an envisioning of this is where the city needs this growth to happen. And then you have the validation of the tenants coming in and going, yes, this is exactly what we wanted.
What do you find to be like the most difficult aspect of the entire development process?
It varies from project to project, but I think finding a consensus of what the city truly needs and what the residents really want. Everybody likes to see things built in somebody else's backyard. They don't like to see the growth happening on their street. They don't like to see the things, the inconvenience of the construction. Sometimes you have some challenges with city councils that, they see it a little bit differently. But, the thing that I really love most about development is it's constant problem solving. You have, the city on one side, you've got the residents on the other, you've got the demand on the third, and then you've got the financial aspect of how to make this all balance, because you cannot build, a luxury high rise in an area of town that doesn't support the rents. So you've really got to bring all of that balance together, and you're constantly solving problems and making adjustments on the run as you're birthing this vision and getting it really dialed in to be the best that you could possibly make it for the area, given all those parameters.
Now, one of the things you just mentioned was basically dealing with the city council and then also dealing with the residents. What are some of the things that you found over the years that have helped you for effectively dealing with the stakeholders?
My mom always told me you get more with honey than you do with vinegar, and I think that really does hold true. I think giving them an explanation. A lot of people, they buy a house in a neighborhood that has, it's got a lot of open space. It's next to an empty field. They don't bother to see what's designed to go there. Then when it happens, so I think a lot of that has to do with education. If you come with a, hey, I'm here to help attitude, and you problem solve with them about, how would you guys like to see this? What kind of separation would you want? If you were to envision this your way, what color would it be painted? Things like that you just really involve them in the process from the beginning. I've also learned early on, the first thing you do when you think you have a deal is you go meet with the city planners and you see what they think. Because if you're constantly fighting them, it's going to make your job a lot harder. But if you go in there and figure out how you can make partners out of them and have them on your side and continue to help them in the vision construction of what's going to be there, it really goes a long way to build a team that gets you to the finish line and involves the community and everybody feels like they won.
So you're talking basically going in and actually getting a lot of feedback from the residents as far as what it is that they hope, kind of their vision for the community, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We do a couple of meetings when we first decide we want to do a project, and we bring everybody in and we kind of lay out what we want, how we think it's going to go, but in very general terms. And then we kind of get their input. Obviously, there's those that don't want anything, but there's some that say, well, what about this and what about that? And, could we do something with this? And so then we come back with some concepts and we say, hey, this is what we think we heard you say. And we just kind of embellish that and continue to refine that through these processes that really give them a feeling that they were part of the design. We are, I've made my living building things and building communities and building, your neighbors. And so being a planner of that and having the community really involved, I think has really gone a long way, because it's not like I live in Idaho and build in Dallas, Texas. I I have a project that's a mile and a half from my home. So it's very much a community where I work.
So one of the things that I read not too long ago was it was talking about how I think it was something along the lines that the actual regulatory costs in a lot of communities is kind of a big uh, like a big barrier for a lot of developers, and usually it's like about 20+% of the overall construction costs in some cases. So what are you finding kind of in your area?
I have seen that where certain areas with urban renewal districts and certain tax overlays, they do make it cost prohibitive in some cases, and people can't. There has to be a balance, right? I mean, I'd love to give you a swimming pool and a jacuzzi and a community jet, but sometimes that just doesn't factor into what the rents are. And so there's always that balancing act of trying to bring that back around and um, balance that. But I've also found that a lot of times the city is willing to consider what you're doing and see if there aren't ways to help offset some of those costs or even have some city participation depending on the size of the project.
And when you say the city participating, what do you mean by that?
Well, we've worked in different areas where a lot of times we have had some tax benefits for what we're bringing into especially with urban renewal districts, where you're allowing that tax base to come back into your projects to pay for improvements, for sidewalks, for sewer extensions, for widening of roadways. So that your project has to bear the cost of the overall to build it. But then there's some tax benefits that will come back to you over the next 4 to 10 years that will repay you for those improvements that everybody gets to use.
Now, what about construction costs in general? Like, where are you seeing, like, what's the change? Because, I mean, a lot of, and especially for like the multifamily value add, and I mean, that's what we hear a lot of right now. Everyone's pushing multifamily value add. A lot of them are saying, it's because, these construction costs, so supply is not going to catch up over the next 10 years because of construction costs. So, where are you seeing construction costs?
Well, I see it a little differently because I've never done a value add. I'm just going to be honest, because I've never seen the value. When you're dealing with a 1973 converted Motel 6 that you're trying to put lipstick on for the sixth time and re-envision it into the new chateau versus going down the street, moving into the newer part of town and creating a Class A property. In the market that we live in, there's not a lot of barriers between that, especially when you're looking at it and saying that, hey, if you're doing a value add, you're going to be paying top dollar for it. Then you're going to be putting in your cap X on top of that. So you're really over cost. And if you cannot leverage the forced depreciation, if you cannot get that $150 a unit more, your project's a bust. You're really underwater. And especially with where we're sitting in the post-COVID environment, and I even hate saying that term, but where we're sitting in our economic state right now, I think we can all agree that the next 9 months at a minimum are going to be pretty flat for rent growth. That means that everybody doing a value add is going to really struggle to compete, where if I'm coming in with a brand new project, I'm looking at it from the standpoint that my costs are based on cost. And I can give you an example from a small project that we're just breaking ground on. It's a 36-unit project that we've got a cost in it of $5.3 million, and we have an appraised value of 6.3. Okay. Now that appraisal is an untrended appraisal. And as you know, an untrended appraisal is based on rents at the time of the appraisal, which was done in December. So if I can get the rents that they were seeing in the neighborhood from 6 months ago, when I finish in 9 months, then my project has gained about $1 million in value from the construction to the stabilization. I think we can all agree that in the next 4 or 5 years, we're not going to see a shortage of tenants, but we're going to see a hesitancy to push the rents. And so when I look at the project and I go, gosh, why would you do a value add right now when you can be part of a ground up that really has a built-in safety net, if you will, because you're building it at a cost of basically under appraised value. And you're going to have the stabilization process, which you're going to have your challenges with that. You're going to have, your competition where somebody's looking at $800 down the street for, something that's 20 years old, or they're looking at, $1,000 or $1,200 for yours. But the reality is that there's a lot more people that are choosing to rent because that's what they want, not that because that's what they have to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're seeing a change in the market as far as your demographic and the dollars that they're willing to spend. But I've always I've seen, especially lately, where I feel that there's a lot more safety in doing a ground up than there is the value add, just because you're not seeing the rent growth that we've been experiencing.
What would you say has been one of your proudest projects that you've worked on so far?
That's like asking me which one's my favorite child, because they are so personal. You create them, you bring them together. But I think the one that I'm the most proud of is it's called Central Commons, and it's a 180 unit apartment complex that we finished in July of last year. And that one was about a 12-month struggle with the city. The developer before had created an illegal lot split, and so we had to go in and undo a bunch of stuff. And we really took kind of a blighted area. It was a mini storage on one side, an RV park on the other. It was really kind of an ugly part of town. And we created a really beautiful project that's I think it's just dynamite. And I mean, I was even redesigning the clubhouse as we were getting ready to break ground. I just completely redesigned the whole thing because I just wanted to have that personal feel, not just like it was a big clubhouse that was just a big house that somebody let you use, but it really feels like a hotel lobby. It's really chic, and it's really, it's just fun, and it gives people, I mean, I love going in there and seeing a lot of people working from that area where they're, hanging out, and they're, they've got their laptops open, and they're doing their thing, and using the media room and the workout centers and the splash pads and all that stuff. So I think that's probably one of my proudest ones.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've been faced with?
It's kind of like anything. My eyes are bigger than my stomach sometimes. And so I think one of the challenges has been that the opportunity is so great right now. Fundraising has been the challenge. I didn't come up with doing a lot of partnerships. One of the things that I've realized in the multifamily space over the years is that it's kind of like an all-star team. You've got this wide receiver, and you've got this quarterback, and you've got this fundraiser, and you've got this developer, and you've got this deal finder, and everybody just kind of works together on it. And as I've outgrown my local friends and family, if you will, that have invested in my projects, I've realized that as a syndicator, I can reach out to this group, and it feels a little different at first because you're reaching out and you're pitching complete strangers, and they're like, yeah, man, I really love what you're doing and I want to be involved. And you're like, wow, you want to be involved? That's awesome. But I think that's been a challenge, but it's been like, it's like meeting long lost family. You're all in the same vein of work, and instead of being competitors, you're looking at it and you're going, hey man, I can provide value to your project, and I can help you with this over here, and I can do that over there, and really working together with everybody. It's definitely been a challenge to learn how to do that and to do that well, but it's also something I'm very proud of.
So what were some of the steps that you took to get better at that?
I don't know that I'm great at it. But, one of the things that I've done, I've spent some time working with Michael Blanc. I've read a lot, I've gotten involved in the online community. I think that has helped a ton because, that's one thing that nobody's shy about. Everybody's willing to help you, help them, help you, help the community, help the understanding of what syndication is. I don't know that syndication was really that big of a thing 5 years ago. I don't know that it was really as prevalent as it is now. And especially when you combine that with a brand new project, most syndicators are of the value add variety, and now you have the brand new, the ground up that used to be unattainable. That's now, now we're bringing that 190 units of syndication. A $45 million project we're bringing to the syndication market. And it's brand new. And I'm not the only one doing it. I see people doing it in Dallas. I've seen people do it in Phoenix. And it's really exciting to see that the industry, as far as syndication and partnership, has really grown to that extent.
Now, speaking of, I'm just like kind of thinking in my mind. So you're saying that a lot of these new development type syndications are coming online. Now I'm thinking, like, if they are being brought online by experienced developers like yourself, as someone that is looking to get into these types of investments passively, as like a new passive investor, I mean, you guys are a pretty safe bet. But what about for like those new people, those newer syndicators that want to get started, but they want to go the development route?
Well, if you're talking about, wanting to get into development, it's not difficult, but it is intricate. There are a lot of moving parts. What people don't see, and let's talk about the benefit of value add. I was a little critical earlier, but value add has the ability you can find a deal, be under contract, and be closed in 90 days, right? I mean, everything that you need is right there in front of you. If you can get a hold of a set of books and a property inspection, you're going to be well on your way to getting a closing done. Financing can look at it. There's not a lot that needs to be done there, so they can be fairly quickly. Where, a development is going to take, a year to get it off the ground to where you're ready to then go to market to raise your money.
So you guys are looking typically about like a year's time before you start to see some cash inflows?
Well, from the time we break ground, it will take, what we do in ours. So we kind of split our syndication into two pieces. We've got the growth side. So if you wanted to get involved, we've got a growth side where you get involved from the cost to the stabilized product. And once we reach stabilization, then we are looking to sell the project. Because one of the things that I found in the syndication with the value add is that people are trying to combine two groups. And you've got the one group that is typically younger, that really wants the growth. They want to, they really want to see their money grow. And then you've got the other group that is typically a little bit older, that wants to see the cash flow. Show me the money. I'm trying to live off of this, and I want to retire, and I want this to happen. But they can't. You can't get one without the other. So you've got, the 8% pref, and then you've got, the catch up, and then you've got, a lot of the growth comes when they sell the project in 7 to 10 years. Where we look at that and we say, hey, we want to grow this to a stabilized product, and then we want to move to the next product to grow, and then we want to sell that other product off. And so the people that are getting involved in that, on the growth side, we're seeing, mid-20s on our ROI, and that's in a 12 to 18 month period of time. So we're talking very quick growth. But then when we go to the next step of the syndication, we're talking a long period of time with no surprises. So you don't have a water line under the building that breaks. You don't have, air conditioners that are constantly going out. You don't have CapEx that got missed. You don't have the things that happen when you inherit an old building. And so the cash flow is very, very easy to project, because you've got brand new product. And so people are looking at that going, hey, I'll take a 7% 6% return on my money to know that I'm in a product that's going to appreciate nicely. It's in the newest part of town. It's got all the great amenities. I've got, great granite countertops, and I've got all the things that I want. And I don't have to worry about any of this forced appreciation. I don't have to believe in anybody because I've got a set of books here that say that we're getting $1,100 a month in rent, and we saw 6% rent rise last year. We're going to project a 4% for next year, and everybody can get on that train without having to think about what is it really going to be down the road. There's less faith involved, and so the payout is less, but there's less maintenance, there's less management, there's less all of those things.
So as a developer, how do you mitigate your risk a little bit? Because from the time you just mentioned, and if I understood it correctly, from the time basically you break ground to completion, you're looking at a little over a year, right, to exit, basically. So how do you mitigate the risk from time zero until the exit?
Well, one of the things that we do in our projections, and I think most developers do this, is we build in an interest reserve. And so we would get a construction loan that would have a 24-month interest reserve. Okay, so we build it. We think we're going to be built out in 9 months, and it's going to take us 3 months to fill. But we've got an interest reserve that'll carry the construction loan for 24 months in case we wind up with a situation where our rents aren't coming along, or we've got COVID all of a sudden when nobody can move. You can't move from. We had record renewals at our projects because nobody wanted to move right now, and so that's there as a safety net. The other thing that you have is you have, like I said, you've got the distance between the cost and the value, so you're able to have some say in what the market does. You're able to maybe reduce some rents to get filled faster. You're trying to do a couple of things, but really we're not in a hurry where most people are trying to say, hey, we've got a 10-year horizon on this. Let's hurry up and get filled. We're saying we want to get $35 more than the neighbor. We want to be $35 more than the next guy, because that does two things for my tenants. One, that tenant made a choice to stay with us. And those people are not as likely to move out in a year when their lease is up for the guy down the street having a $99 move-in special. The second thing that it does is if you take 180 units at a cap 5.5 with $35 or more per door in rent on a monthly basis, you've just added $1.8 million to your project. So you're really able to control the value of your project and really push how that thing leases up just by having that kind of a let's not get in a hurry mentality.
Do you guys also seek a perm financing commitment up front, just as like an added layer of security? No, because as much as you might think that would be an added layer of security, it also limits where you're at. Go back 24 months and do a construction perm on a project. Then what kind of interest rate would you be locked in at? Right. Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but the other side of it is, whenever you're doing that, they always they want to lock the permanent in at about the 75% mark. Whereas if you can take that and push that all the way up to get into your 90s, then you can really get into some great financing with HUD and some other things like that, because you've gotten to a 95% occupancy for a period of time.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys go for the lease up stabilization and then get the perm. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And usually when we go to perm, we bring in another group.
Yeah.
We bring in a different set of investors that are looking at a different investment profile.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we get a 2-for-1,
yeah.
two syndications out of one project.
Nice. Oh, so do you guys actually stay in the deal then afterwards? Yeah, you do. Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we see most of the people that are in the growth phase, that are in the building phase, they tend to be younger. And so they want to get their money to grow. And so they're looking to get out of it and get into the next growth one. Whereas then we're bringing in a different profile that's typically in their mid 50s or late 50s, early 60s, that are looking to start clipping those coupons and creating that nest egg, right? That they can plan on. We've got $3,000 this month, Martha. Let's see if we can make it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you basically stay on as GPs. So then what do you guys typically do? Do you handle like the property management? Like what aspect of the deal do
Yeah.
you handle then afterwards?
So I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I own a property management company that deals with this in an ongoing basis because, there's property management companies that think that they're doing you a favor by hurrying up and renting, getting you full, and that sometimes that's what you want. I've not seen that to be the greatest because let's just say that you had a property management company that did that to you last summer and they hurried up and got you full. And now you have everybody coming up for renewal. We're just coming out of the crisis that we're coming out of, and you've got half of your portfolio is turning over for rents, and you're in the same boat as you were last year, right? We like to go at a more measured pace where the people are. We like to do, in a brand new, we'll do some 6-month leases, we'll do some 9-month leases. So we're getting a mix of renewal dates. But we're also looking to maximize every bit of value out of what we can. We have different revenue streams from the cable and internet we provide to additional amenities on site. We valet trash services. I mean, anything we can do to provide additional streams of income so that by the time we're done, my management company has built this thing to make maximum dollars on day one, so that if and when I need to sell today, or in a year or 3 years, we are in a position that we are not sitting there going, well, we need to tune these rents up in order to get it to market, to get it to sell. Plus, it also creates the best environment for my investors because we're getting every dollar out of the property that we possibly can because we truly are the owner management team.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things actually that came to mind too, when you had originally mentioned, you were talking about the two different limited partner type investor profile. And you mentioned kind of the growth investor. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was actually the treatment of the capital gains, because you're looking at a really short holding period, essentially. Now, for you, I guess I kind of understood that for part of your investment, you're keeping in the property. So you're essentially just kind of rolling it over into the second syndication, staying in the property. But how do you kind of, I guess, lower the tax basis? Do you do like 1031 for the LPs, or how do you handle that?
There's several. As a syndicator, you kind of get all types. So a lot of people that are in my syndications come out of their self-directed IRAs, whether they're qualified or non-qualified. Just because that's a way to protect the growth. You have to plan ahead before you get in the deal. But then we're also working with a couple of tax professionals that'll allow us to unwind the syndication, and each person do their own tax preferred treatment after that. Typically, the problem is that on a smaller project, a 36-unit project, we would not own it long enough collecting rents to be able to say that we owned the rental property for 366 days, which is what's required, that you generate rents for at least a year in order to 1031 out of it. On the larger projects, we do, and we are able to get that tax treatment should we go. And then we're able to go our separate ways through some tax allocation and accounting that way.
Okay. All right. So what would you say to newer people that are looking at getting started in this business? If you were looking at yourself starting all over, what would you tell yourself?
There's a lot of things I would tell myself, but I think the biggest one is to find a proven, reputable syndicator. Don't look at the returns so much as the reputation of the syndicator, and figure out the process. Get comfortable with what's going on. I hear a lot of people, just trying to chase the return, to where they're just saying, well, I got the best return here, but you got in with somebody this is their first syndication, or they don't have a construction background, or they don't have a property management background, or, they're good at raising money, but they don't know anything about what they're doing after that. You really need to make sure that who you're going into business with in my opinion, is more important than what the returns are. And there's been some mistakes I've made in the past where I've focused on the returns and not seen some of those other hurdles that should have had more of my consideration.
Mhm. And when you mentioned some of the other things that you thought that you missed, could you give us a couple examples?
Well, I've looked at some projects and I've seen how, there's a really incredible return to be had over here, but there's a lot of risk involved. There's a lengthy process. The city doesn't feel kindly about that, but you can battle, and there's a legal way to do it. And so I've chased those projects, and I spent 2.5 years chasing a project that at the end I finally got it, and I was so exhausted, then I didn't want to do it. And the return for the time and the effort and the energy wasn't worth it, whereas if you're getting in with a tried and true syndicator that, he kind of goes like clockwork. He knows what he's looking for. He knows what he's doing. He gets it in. He gets it done. There's not a lot of surprises. He's got a good due diligence team, and maybe you're not getting, the return that you think you should, but you're not getting the headache and the hassle that goes with it. Another example is where, sometimes I try to do everything myself. And there's a reason why there's the amateurs and the professionals. And you always pay for a professional. I don't know anybody that cannot benefit from professional property management. And while I do have my own, I went out and headhunted and picked two of the best property professionals that I knew of to come onto my team. Instead of trying to do property management my way, I went and got people that were well-versed in it, had worked for some of the biggest and the brightest, Greystar and some of the others, and brought them onto my team and didn't have to go through that learning curve.
And what would be a good book recommendation you'd have?
The one I like right now is Principles with Ray Dalio. I've really enjoyed that one. It's amazing that someone that has achieved the pinnacle of success that he has achieved is so open about his life. There's stories in there about the struggles with his son and the mental disorders that he has in there. For a man like that to be that open lets me know that my struggles in my life are real and they're okay. I'm not the only one going through hardship, and there's some camaraderie in that. There's a feeling like, yeah, Ray knows what I'm talking about,
All right. And how could our listeners get in touch with you?
Easiest way to find me is shannonrobnett.com. You can find me on, the usual social haunts, Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Shannon Ray Robnett. But that, shannonrobnett.com is the easiest way to find me.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon. It was a pleasure having you on here today.
Hey, thank you so much, Dion.